Hello, everyone. My name is Francisco Sayou. I am the Emerging Technology Director at Renew Wisconsin. Today, I am pleased to introduce our keynote speaker, Michelle Moore. I first heard Michelle Moore speak on National Public Radio, and I have been following her work ever since. Michelle Moore is the CEO of Groundswell, a nonprofit that builds community power by connecting solar, resiliency, and energy efficiency with economic development, affordability. My screen is flicking. Okay. And quality of life. Michelle has been helping communities across America shape sustainable, clean energy futures for 25 years. Her accomplishments range from leading the effort to cut federal energy use by $11 billion and deploy 3.2 gigawatts of new renewable energy for President Obama, to developing innovative new clean energy programs for her hometown. Michelle was born and raised in LaGrange, Georgia, and now lives in Midlothian, Virginia, with her husband and family. Her work is rooted in her faith and the commitment to love your neighbor as yourself. Michelle is a board member at the Tennessee Valley Authority, TVA, which is the nation's largest public power utility, and the author of an inspiring book about revitalizing America's hometowns through clean power. Michelle will provide her remarks, then we'll have an opportunity for Q&A. We look forward to your questions. Now, please welcome Michelle Moore.
Thank you so much, Francisco. It is such a blessing to be here with all of you today. I am delighted, and I just want to emphasize, too, just in terms of the spirit of the ideas that I'll share with you all today, the single most important thing about my bio is that, for me, it's really all about loving your neighbor as yourselves. It's about my faith. And for us in this community, and renewables, and clean power, and sustainability, how do we use the geeky, technical, engineering-oriented, policy-driven stuff we know how to do to love the people around us? So I'm going to take us through just a couple of slides today, if I can figure out where they are. There we go. I think we're good, actually. Yes, we should indeed. Awesome. Thank you so much. All right, so y'all, we're going to talk about rural power. And I am from a small town in rural West Georgia. And not quite 100 years ago, it was one of the many places in America that didn't have any electricity. And then in 1933, under Franklin Delano Roosevelt, actually with the TVA, with the Tennessee Valley Authority Act, America began to bring power to the farms. And within just about 10 years, more than 90% of our rural communities that hadn't been able to turn the lights on, right, that weren't able to electrify their operations, that were still struggling with not having lights so kids could study at night, were able to enjoy the benefits of electricity. And we're at this point, in 2023 now, in the midst of the largest single investment in rural power in 100 years. And it's a moment that in so many ways is similar to what we were going through as a country back in the 1930s when we were just trying to turn the lights on the farm. We're going through this extraordinary transformation in our energy sector, with it becoming cleaner and decarbonized, bringing in new technologies, new opportunities for economic development. And we have together at this moment an opportunity to really return to that same spirit, of service, where we were working together in the 1930s to bring not just power, but prosperity to rural America. And rural America, particularly when we're talking about energy, when we're talking about solar, when we're talking about wind, that has an extraordinarily important role to play in our local clean energy futures. And as we're talking about this together, I also just want to give a special shout out to defense communities, to our veterans, and to the U.S. military. Raise your hands if you're a veteran. Raise your hands if you're a military family. Thank y'all so very much. Thank y'all so very much. Not only back in the 1930s were defense communities an incredibly important part of electrification. Veterans became the linemen who were the heroes, that helped to string power lines across the U.S. But thinking back even to the early 2000s, that 3 gigawatts that President Obama got done back in the early 2000s, that was our military services who did that. And in places like my home state, the commitment for resilient, American-made clean power is what made the market for solar in states like Georgia. So thank you all very much for everything you've done. Thank you for your leadership, and thank you for everything that you continue to do. So for me, my journey in this story, rooted in my faith, but it's really my story too. It's my family's story. My grandparents, my Mama and Papa Knopp, who were here in this photo. Mama's in heaven right now thinking, why'd you put that photo up there? Because my hair wasn't looking too good. But Mama was, she always had on stockings and did her hair up, did her makeup up every time she walked out of the house. So she's a little mad at me right now. But, my grandparents, Mama and Papa Knopp, Mama and Papa Moore, they worked in the cotton mills their entire lives. Their families were sharecroppers in East Alabama and West Georgia. They moved to the city to go to work. And in their home, it is more home to me than any place I've ever lived, in a mill village, Dunson Mill Village in LaGrange, Georgia. It was one of those houses that would have a $400 or $500 utility bill anytime it got too cold, and you had to worry about the pipes freezing. And it wasn't because the electricity was expensive. Even rural power and public power today has some of the lowest utility rates in America. It's because the homes were so inefficient. My mama's house was that energy inefficient. And it was backbreaking to have to pay that bill when it would come around, but even a $500 utility bill was better than having to pay for new pipes. And for me, my inspiration in the work, and inspiration that some of your stories may contribute to your work too, is how can people who live in homes like my mama's, families like my family, really prosper and thrive if we go through this transformation together. And it matters. Our rural electric cooperatives in particular, and our small public power utilities can be incredible heroes of this story. Not only were they purpose-built for very similar purposes back in the 1930s as energy democracies, rooted in values that deeply connected energy, economic opportunity, and a good life for working people, they serve a huge percentage of the country. Even today, more than 900 rural utilities and public power utilities across the U.S., more than 56% of America's landmass, and a huge percentage of our population too. And we don't often think about rural power, the role that rural communities play in this work, apart from being important land, opportunities for installing solar panels and wind turbines. But what are the other opportunities to really deeply connect our local clean energy futures to everyone in America? And it's extraordinarily important when we think about the opportunity to heal energy burdens with what we build too. This is a map from the National Renewable Energy Laboratory that shows where energy burdens are the highest for our low-income neighbors. And energy burdens, that's a measure of what percentage of your household income you spend on electricity and heating your home. As you can see, where I'm from in Georgia is pretty rough, y'all. Energy burdens are extremely high, more than 30% in many counties, but it's prevalent across the country. And it's prevalent in many communities that are served by rural electric cooperatives and public power utilities, in part because those same utilities serve more than 90% of the persistent poverty counties in America. So if we're looking for opportunities to build local clean energy futures that are also just and more economically equitable, this is the map of opportunity, and it goes straight through our rural electric cooperatives. So how do we do it? How do we think about it? We've got tons of technologies. We've got an extraordinarily diverse energy landscape in America, right? We don't have just one energy future together. We have local energy futures that are driven by the extraordinary federalism, right, that shapes our energy policy landscape. Every state is a little bit different. Every state has a little bit different utility market, so there are 50 energy markets across the U.S. plus our territories. And not only that, but sometimes local laws and regulations, even building codes, and the administrative policies that our utilities have deeply shape the opportunity, and they also deeply shape how we do our work. And there's not just one way for us to move forward, right? If everybody in the country tried to be just like New York or California or DC or Maryland or, I don't know, Texas, Louisiana, or Arkansas, we'd be fighting forever over how to move forward instead of thinking about, okay, well, this is the better future that we want, but we've all got a lot of different pathways to get there based on the gifts that we have, based on our local blessings, based on what our natural resources are like, based on our values, based on our economies. So how do we start to do the work? So I want to share, instead of sort of technical strategies and tactics, some values that I hope that we can all find common cause in and find exciting, innovative, loving ways to express in our work. The first is let's put the public back in public utilities, right? No matter whether you're a rural electric cooperative with a democratically elected board of directors, or you're a investor-owned utility governed by a public service commission, the public, democratic control, democratic oversight is fundamentally a part of who you are, what you do, why you exist, and why you get to make money. So let's think about people first and profit in service, right, to the people mission. And I want to give you an example of what that can look like. And this is something that, regardless of what kind of utility service territory you're in, what your state rules are, is a powerful opportunity for service. And that's for us to invest in community resilience, right? It's not just about solar or renewables and clean power. It's about putting a battery on it, right? So in case we experience extreme weather, which you can hardly call extreme anymore, right? It's so commonplace that stuff's just weird. Whether it's hot or cold or drought or, rain is kind of feast or famine these days. Sometimes the lights go off more often, or we just feel more vulnerable, right? Like even if the utility stays in place, what if our homes get hit? Big old tornado just came through my hometown of LaGrange, tore the roofs off 20 homes, and destroyed a whole bunch of businesses in the process as well. We're not going to stop the tornadoes, but how can we make our communities more resilient? So if it gets too hot or if it gets too cold or the power goes out or our neighbors just need a place to stay warm or stay cool or stick their medicine or their baby formula in the fridge, they've got a place to go. So how can we put solar and energy storage in our churches, in our schools, in our hospitals, in places where people gather to put the public back in public utilities as we're building this energy transition? So think about community resilience as an aim of the technology, and think about how that idea can be expressed regardless of our marketplace. We have a powerful opportunity to align our value with our values, right? It's not about the dollars and cents, about what the money can do. And a specific opportunity I want to share there is around the Inflation Reduction Act, because I saw y'all been talking about that a little bit today. Everybody in the clean energy industry is going to be talking about that for like the next decade. But a very specific opportunity we have there is around the changes in the tax credits in the ITC, right? That ITC is now, there's a direct pay option that the IRS is going to be telling us how to implement here soon so that nonprofits can get a refund, essentially, if they're installing solar energy storage or other clean technologies. And then there are also all these adders, right? An extra 10% for projects built in underserved or disadvantaged communities, to use the policy term. Although that's a terrible way to describe people, right? These places where we should have been investing in all along. An extra 10% for union apprenticeships on projects. from a policy perspective, those adders aren't just there so folks can make more money. Those adders are there because it gives us an opportunity to share that value with communities, with people, with places that need the investment, so that we're not just prospering ourselves, we're prospering together. So aligning the value that we bring to the community, the places that we build projects, how we do it, how we train, how we invest in workforce, how we bring opportunity to communities that have been under-resourced and under-invested in and marginalized for many, 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 many years. It's a powerful opportunity for us to do that. And every single person in this room, no matter what role you play in your company or your community or in this sector as a whole, you have an opportunity to do this. And there are more tools available now with the Inflation Reduction Act than we have ever had in my lifetime, probably in the lifetime of most of the folks in this room too. We can repair, restore, and do justice through our work. And doing justice as a Christian, that is part of my mission statement too. That's part of my job, all of our jobs as well. And a specific example I want to share here is around energy efficiency. Energy efficiency, let's admit, it's like the least sexy clean energy thing in the world. It's all behind the walls, right? You can't take a picture of it. It's not necessarily going to get you any more money when you sell your house. But it's extraordinarily important to health, well-being, and quality of life, just like my mama's house. What can you do to take those utility bills from $500 when it gets cold or hot down to something more reasonable, which in my home community would be like $160 a month if it were 100 degrees outside. And just like in the Grange across the country, those maps of high energy burden don't just correspond with poverty, they also correspond with neighborhoods that have been subject to policies like redlining, historically, where communities were targeted, underinvested in and robbed of resources just because of the color of their skin or where they came from. So thinking about how can we deploy tools like energy efficiency so that we're not just, using electrons more efficiently or saving money, but so that we're deploying reparative investments into our community, right? Loving our neighbor, healing our neighborhoods in the process is an extraordinary opportunity that we all have ahead of us. And again, we don't only have the knowledge in this room, we've got a beautiful clean energy army out here today in Wisconsin, but we've got the tools and resources to do it in a big way, in a big way, in a way that could change the trajectory of our generations with the resources from the IRA. We also want to count our blessings and work from abundance. I think a great way to do anything, a great way to start every day, a great way that I begin and end my day actually is just by giving thanks. No matter how hard the day was, I bet you there was some good in it. What was that good? How can we give thanks and really amplify it? And work from what we have in abundance instead of fretting so much over what we don't have. And I think in clean energy and sustainability, you would think that would be a real native value, right? But sometimes it can be tough because there's always like a different policy that we think needs to be passed, like some financial innovation that would allow things to go, better and faster. But we have a lot of beautiful resources too, and we see that in our natural environment as well. What do we have in abundance? Is it like, Washington, D.C., which is Groundswell's hometown, an abundance of solar renewable energy credits, an abundance of little rooftops in a dense built environment? Or is it like Wisconsin, where you have an extraordinary legacy of beautiful architecture and agricultural gorgeousness and cheese, which I also really love, by the way. How can what we do really celebrate that and uplift it? One of my favorite ideas, and I want to give a shout out to Dr. Greg Barron-Gaffer down in Arizona, who's leading the charge on this in the U.S., is agrovoltaics. My mama, my Aunt Ida, always had a big kitchen garden, and they would grow the three sisters, which in Georgia is corn, beans, and tomatoes, and squash, actually. Sometimes there was a fourth in there. They kind of like to hang out together. And you'd get more yield, by putting those plants together. And with agrovoltaics, even though it's a little more expensive, right, to add that extra steel to get the panels a little bit further off the ground, what research is showing that particularly in an era of climate change, when it's hotter or colder or drier or wetter, that by pairing solar panels with certain crops, you get more yield out of your solar panels because you're mitigating the heat, under the panels. And you get more yield out of your crops as well because it's helping maintain moisture and providing a little shade when the sun is scorching. So agrovoltaics, a beautiful way to share what we have in abundance. And I also want to give a shout out to Vernon Electric Cooperative. Anybody from Vernon here today? All right, I see a hand in the back there. Thank you very much, Vernon Electric Cooperative. One of my dear friends, John Carson, whose family has a farm here in Wisconsin where he grew up. Vernon Electric Cooperative was their hometown utility, one of the very first community solar projects in the country. Sharing how we can use what we have in abundance is good neighbors, goodwill, and some beautiful land to be able to share solar too. So thank you guys so much for the example and for the innovation and really the love that project showed and setting a course for others. And in that spirit of community solar, we can also share and serve. Share and serve. And there are so many opportunities for us to think about not only what do we have in abundance, but what do we have so much of that we can share it with our neighbors who may need it. And community solar is a really beautiful format to do that in. And I want to share just a little story from a Groundswell project in Washington, D.C. as inspiration too. It's at a monastery. I never knew there was a monastery in Washington, D.C., but guess what? There is, and there actually two. But we installed a small community solar project with the Discalced Carmelite Friars. And in that project, we have people who subscribe and pay. They pay for their community solar subscription. And then they donate their savings, so that about 20% of the families who subscribe to the project are able to get their power for free. These are income qualified, families. And in D.C. is very expensive, right? It's hard to pay the rent and your utility bill and your groceries and all the things. So for a family who's, struggling to make ends meet, trying to work up to that point where you've got a little bit more financial stability, putting $500 back in your pocket per year is a big deal. That's grocery money, that's rent money. But for a more affluent family, the savings that they would otherwise pocket, right, about $12, $15 a month, something like that. I mean, these days, that's like a latte and a half at Starbucks. Right? It just doesn't matter. Like, what are you really going to do with that? So just thinking about how you can share your savings and how can you pool those opportunities in innovative ways, to really be able to serve your neighbor and show how clean energy, the clean energy revolution that we're all a part of is not only a different kind of electron, with less pollution, it's really a different way of doing things, a different way of powering our communities, a different way of connecting with the economy, a different way of serving people. I also want to suggest that we all need to think about this as well in terms of courageous innovation. And this is a term, actually, that was coined by a dear friend of mine who has since passed. He and his wife lived here in Wisconsin. His name's David Mueller. His name was David Mueller. And he talked about it in terms of how much courage it took to just do things a little differently. Because most people don't like change. Some days I don't like change. It's hard, right? It's hard to rehabituate yourself, to do things a little bit differently. It's hard sometimes to confront things, right, that we could do better. Sometimes people don't want to hear it. Sometimes people are just tired, right? We're just kind of tired. Sometimes it's nice. It would be nice just to be able to, I'm going to do what I did yesterday. So we can all express this idea of courageous innovation, in connecting and challenging ourselves and others to do better and be better. And the last value I want to uplift is just partnership and connection. Nobody can do this work on their own, not only because it's hard, not only because it takes courageous innovation, but because at the end of the day, it's so connected, right? Like energy powers everything. You know, it touches policy and finance and construction. We have to think about workforce and high schools, and are we getting enough people into the electrical trades, and where's the steel come from, and what are we doing at the end of the life of the solar panel, and how are we creating new battery technologies, and where are we mining the stuff? I mean, it's just so deeply connected regardless of how you look at it. And so working in that spirit, thinking about values-aligned partnerships, maintaining connection, and I would say as well, just maintaining the community and the joy that comes from being together. I know this is the first time that Renew has been together like this in a few years since the global pandemic, and this is like the biggest event ever. How happy are y'all just to be here together sitting at a table at lunch, right? Let's maintain that spirit in the everyday work too. And let's get to work. You know, there's plenty of great stuff to get done together. There are more resources than ever to get it done. Sometimes, you know, the federal government with resources like the IRA can be a little challenging too. You know, it's like your big brother that shows up and is like, I'm here to help, and you're like, oh, I don't know about that. But you know, there are good intentions, you know, and good ideas and good fuel there to get stuff done locally too. And, you know, ultimately for me, this is all about sharing ideas in a journey too. You can find them all in the book that I put out earlier. Well, my gosh, it's not earlier this year. It's like middle of last year now, Rural Renaissance, which is available on Island Press. And I'm very grateful to be a member of this community of practitioners too. So, Francisco, let's take some questions together.
Excellent, thank you. Please give a hand for Michelle.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. I'm reading your book, by the way, and it's amazing. It's crazy because I have half of the book is highlighted. It's like, I gotta use these here. I gotta use these. It's taking me a long time because it's just that good. I have a microphone, and we have a few minutes. So if you have a question, raise your hand, and I'll bring the microphone to you. So.
Hi, Michelle. Thank you. I'm Alicia Leinberg. I'm on the Renew board. And I've been at this conference every year. And I am also extremely excited to have so many people. I really appreciate that you brought up the point about rural electric co-ops.
Yeah.
I live in a rural area, and actually a few of us are here. We created an energy district this year to talk about energy in our community. And I am wondering, you know, since you're enthusiastic about rural electric co-ops and our democratically elected member boards,
yep.
How do you best work with these member boards for the last value that you brought up there, courage and innovation?
Yes.
It's very, very challenging. Some people, actually, Bill Bailey here has had more success than we have had, but I wonder if you have any tips, places that they can look to, or other ways that we can get them engaged in moving and actually kind of enlivening our rural communities with this energy transition. Thank you.
Thank you so much. That's such an important question. You know, in the Southeast, for example, you know, there are real challenges there with governance. Because in some of the communities where I'm from, you know, you've got co-op boards that have even passed board membership down from father to son, you know, through generations. And so that democratic, little d democratic value, you know, isn't being expressed. But I want to actually share the inspiration from one of my dear friends. I actually dedicated the book to him, is Curtis Wynn. And Curtis, currently the CEO of one of the biggest rural co-ops in the country around Orlando, which is close to where Curtis grew up. He was the CEO at Roanoke Electric Cooperative in eastern North Carolina, which is one of the poorest parts of the state. But y'all, he built the energy of the utility of the future there. It had all the things, you know. And just an extraordinary innovator. He was the past elected president of NRECA as well. And Curtis always uplifted the 7 cooperative principles. That is what he rooted every single action he took in. And it's because he believed in them, right? Curtis's first job out of high school was washing trucks. at the local rural co-op where he grew up in rural Florida. He believed in co-ops. And those principles were not invented by, a trade association. Those principles actually came out of the worker cooperative movement in the UK, in Manchester, England, and the Rochdale Society. The Rochdale Society, which has deep ties to America as well. When Frederick Douglass, was a leader for freedom and for civil rights and for really ethics and justice in America, for us living up to our values. And he himself had to buy his own freedom as an enslaved person. The Rochdale Society, one of the very first cooperatives who originated the ideas embodied in the cooperative principles today, contributed 30% of the funds that he needed to be able to buy his own freedom. So the cooperative movement, not just in the US, but internationally, is rooted in justice and rooted in self-determination. And those cooperative principles include democracy. And they include the ideas that we're all better together, right? Community matters. They're rooted in community. They're rooted in economic opportunity. And they're rooted in justice. So I think that everywhere where there may be challenges, with the rural cooperative boards, go back to the foundations, right? Go back to those 7 cooperative principles and deeply inquire, and discern where the operations of a co-op or even the way the elections are happening may be off track, versus what the founding intent was. Because that founding intent is built into everything about the way co-ops work in America, up to and including their nonprofit tax status, right? So if they're not operating democratically, they're also not operating in alignment with their tax status.
Thank you. Other questions? Not all at once.
Well, thank you and welcome to Wisconsin.
Thank you.
My name is Andy Olson with the Environmental Law and Policy Center, and we've worked in the Rural Energy for America program for about 20 years.
Yes.
And I was wondering, if you are involved with that. We did get another $2 billion over the next 10 years, so please, the competition's down. Look to that to build your rural projects. But do you have any suggestions for how to get more uptake, kind of on the demand side? Because we're in the position now where the early adopters, are pretty well outfitted for energy efficiency and renewables. But how can we reach various rural communities, especially the underserved?
Thank you so much, for that wonderful question as well. And yeah, I love me some REAP. If it's the federal government, it's going to have some crazy acronyms, and REAP is one of the best. $2 billion for rural energy resilience. Awesome. I'm going to have to use that in my future talks. But, we're thinking about rural cooperatives, and it's kind of in that similar spirit, right? About, courageous innovation and working with boards and governance and rerouting how we're operating in those beautiful, beautiful 7 cooperative principles. We also have to recognize that many of our rural electric utilities and our rural municipalities, too, like public power utilities, they are just as economically strained as the communities they serve. They don't have a whole lot of employees. They may not have a whole lot of resources. And not only that, but it takes time and effort and patience to fill out the federal grant applications. And Groundswell works with federal agencies, and I can speak from experience that while the intention is there, the love is there, and the policy, when it comes down to filling out the paperwork, man, is hardcore. But there are so many, there's not just an opportunity, right? I'm going to say that there's a responsibility and a call, right, for organizations in our community, nonprofit organizations. Maybe you're a neighboring municipality. Maybe you're a business. Maybe you're a rural business, to come alongside, rural communities and institutions to help with that work. And if we're talking about the REAP program, for example, or we're talking about many of the other federal grants and programs out there, and they are rolling out every single day, if you want to focus on what the rural opportunities are, sign up with the White House Rural Partnership. You'll get an email every single Friday enumerating every single new funding opportunity that there is and giving you a link for a webinar on how to apply. Rural Partnership, which is a White House initiative, you can sign up online. But building those partnerships, because without getting too technical and geeky, a lot of those grants allow, like if you're a nonprofit, you can apply so long as you're in partnership with a municipality or a rural cooperative or a qualifying entity. Organizations can team together and have a primary partner, a primary granted entity, and then subrecipients is the term from a federal perspective. And so we can work together. So again, thinking about abundance, like what do you have in abundance, what can you share? What you have in abundance may just be some FTE, like some people time and some expertise to help a rural neighbor fill out the paperwork. So even if you're working here in Madison, if there were ideas that Madison were advancing, think about, okay, well, how might I be able to transfer that idea to a rural partner and maybe, go after and put my arms around a community that's been underserved or under-resourced or may not have just the people time that it needs to get this stuff done. So thank you for that question.
Any other questions? Well, I guess I'll ask a question I have, which is, this is a tremendous time to be in this industry, right? I mean, the level of support that we're seeing now, it's just crazy in a good way. It's a very hopeful moment to be in energy. And you talk about some of the opportunities in your book to, revitalize these communities. Usually when I'm out there talking about EVs, I usually say, for some of the rural communities, EVs is like the new railroad. It can bring people that right now don't have a reason to stop in your main street. They will, if you give them the reasons to do it, and it will bring economic development to your community, so do that. So my question is, what are your maybe top 2 big hopes and fears through this transition? So we got these 10 years where we have all this great investment coming. What are your biggest hopes, and where can we go wrong?
Yeah, and thank you so much for that question, Francisco, because I think that, fear, that's real. Right, and not just what my fears are for for where we could go off the path, and I will definitely share that. But thinking about change, a lot of people don't like change. There's a lot of fear about what this transition will mean. What does that look like? So when I think about what's my greatest fear, what I would just be so sad, not just fear, but just like sadness, deep sadness, if we went this way is. If our clean energy transformation, if we just replicated all the disparities of the old dirty energy economy, right? Using coal and oil started out with good intentions. It was about power and industry, and it lifted millions and millions and millions of people, not just in the U.S., but globally, out of poverty. It was a whole lot better than killing whales and burning their flesh for oil to keep our streets lit, which is what we did before, coal, oil, and gas. But then there came a time where we knew it was hurting people, but we didn't stop. We didn't stop. And in some places, we're still fighting it. So, how do we move forward in love, and how do we really reflect on our past and build better values into our future so that we're not just creating like a clean energy dystopia, right, where the rich folks in the big cities have clean power, and then we're just extracting clean power from farms without really having farmers and rural communities get any value out of it. Like, we can't go down that path, y'all. Please, let's please not go down that path, because we could, but it's our choice. We can choose to do better. And then when I think about fear, I think about something one of my colleagues, I'm someone who is a fellow nominee and now serves on the TVA board, says. He's like, we got 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason. And, we ought to be listening at least twice as much as we're talking. I talk a lot. I don't always follow that rule, I got to say. But when we're out in rural communities or we're out talking to boards, rural cooperative boards that may be reticent or worried about change, we got to listen and really understand and hear where people's concerns are. And in my experience, find that place where we have values in common. Where do you share a value? Where do you have a story in common? And then use that shared story, use that shared value to help move together to a different place. And I think that gets over so much so much fear and concern. And if we think about it, even from a biblical perspective, perfect love casteth out fear, right? So love helps overcome it.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We're going to close it here, so please join me on another round of applause for Michelle Moore. Thank you for coming to Wisconsin. Please stay around. We're going to have the next part of the program. So I'm waiting. Oh, right here. I was looking the wrong way. No. Okay, use that one. Yeah. Wow. Thank you so much.
Right. Oh. Okay. Oh, okay. Very good. Thanks. All right. So after that delicious lunch, it's time for dessert. And dessert takes the form of recognizing some individuals and organizations and companies who, through their vision and actions, are taking Wisconsin further along the way towards a 100% clean energy future. Our honorees believe passionately in the power of leading by example, often rallying their allies and partners to raise their game. By recognizing their achievements today, we amplify and extend into the future the positive impact they are making today. So I'm going to ask all those who expect to receive a plaque to move towards the front of this of the room, if you haven't done so already. This is going to be an unusual format because we have a lot of honorees, and because we want to make sure that we finish up so to let the Monona Terrace staff prepare this room for the next presentation. So what we're going to do is we're going to present the physical award to the first two recipients, and then we're going to show the slides for all the other award recipients. And then at the end of that, we'll have picture taking happen there. But the first two recipients, we hope to be able to have the photographer take pictures in real time. So apologies for the unusual way this is going to happen. So we have 4 categories of recognition this year. We have a clean energy policymaker, clean energy pioneer, clean energy warriors, brand new category, and clean energy honor roll. So this year, our Clean Energy Policymaker Award goes to Senator Robert Coles, representing the 2nd Senate District. Representing the 2nd Senate District since 1987, Senator Coles has made it a priority throughout his legislative career to advance clean energy through thoughtful and balanced policies. Senator Coles takes a deep and abiding interest in the health and productivity of Wisconsin's Focus on Energy program. In 2006, Senator Coles authored legislation to fund Focus on Energy through ratepayer dollars and to place it under the auspices of the Public Service Commission, thereby protecting it from the appropriation process. That same 2006 law expanded Wisconsin's renewable portfolio standard. Senator Coles understands the economic and environmental benefits that come with utility investments in solar and wind power sited within our borders. Core elements of Wisconsin's clean energy policy, which can be summarized as a preference for energy efficiency and renewables over fossil energy, are contained in the 3 laws depicted in this slide. Senator Coles played an instrumental role in drafting, shaping, and passing all 3 laws. Last session, Senator Coles authored SB 692, which updates Wisconsin PACE program. That PACE stands for Property Assessed Clean Energy. This allows for more projects to be funded, including electric vehicle charging station and electric reliability improvements such as battery storage or microgrids. One of Senator Cole's legislative priorities last year was SB 573, a bill clarifying that those entities who own or lease and operate EV charging stations are not considered a public utility under Wisconsin law. Though the bill did not clear the legislature last year, we remain hopeful that a consensus package will emerge that will remove this barrier to electric vehicle adoption. So with that, it is our privilege to present this year's Clean Energy Policymaker Award to Senator Robert Coles. Oh, okay. You want to? Do the picture over here? Yeah. This year, our Clean Energy Pioneer Award goes to the City of Madison. In March 2017, Madison adopted an ambitious climate goal to achieve 100% renewable energy and net zero carbon emissions for city operations by 2030 and for the whole community by 2050. This award salutes the city for its uniquely conscientious and systematic approach to advancing clean energy locally and ensuring that its investments and programs benefit the entire community. As of today, the city has installed more than 1,800 kilowatts of solar generation on its own facilities, including approximately 500 kW last year. Unlike other local governments, the city designs and installs most of its solar installations. This initiative also provides a platform for a solar training program, which is called the city's Green Power Program, and this helps underemployed and unemployed residents for future and helps prepare them for future job opportunities in the solar marketplace. Leading by example, the city benchmarks the energy performance of its own buildings and strives to maximize their energy efficiency. The city now has 5 LEED Platinum facilities, and you're in one of them now. As of today, the city's Madison Sun program had facilitated the installation of 285 solar PV systems on homes and about a dozen more serving nonprofit organizations and multifamily dwellings. This program had its most productive year ever in 2022. Through Madison Gas and Electric's Renewable Energy Rider program, the city sources 5 megawatts of solar from an off-site array in southeast Madison. Output from the Hermsdorf array, energized last year, accounts for nearly 20% of the city's electricity consumption. And finally, by the end of 2022, the city had acquired 85 electric vehicles, more than 150 hybrid electric vehicles, and the first all-electric fire truck operating in the United States. The city is also testing 3 all-electric buses. Given all that, it is our privilege to present this year's Clean Energy Pioneer Award to the City of Madison. And we're honored to present this award to Mayor Satya Rhodes Conway, who is accepting this award on behalf of the city she is responsible for. Thank you. You want to say a few words?
Thank you all so much, and thank you for the work that you're doing in the renewable energy economy. Thanks to Renew for their great partnership over the many years that we've worked together. And I am accepting this on behalf of the city, but the thanks really goes to a much bigger team at the city. Many departments are engaged in this work, but I want to particularly recognize the engineering division and our Green Power Solar trainee team for doing the rooftop solar installations, but also for swapping out lights for LEDs and for installing electric vehicle chargers. And the Green Power team is here in the back. Can you give them a round of applause? Our fleet division, similarly, is bound and determined to make sure that Madison has the greenest fleet in the nation, because we do believe in leading by example. Our partners at MG&E and the Hermdorf family for the solar farm, which we're really grateful for. And then, of course, Renew works with us on the Madison program, and a large part of that success is due to their hard work. You know, I'm really proud of the work that we've done so far at the City of Madison, but there is a lot more to do. And I just want to call your attention to the Wisconsin State Journal's editorial today, which represents deeply inaccurate reading of the work that we're trying to do to get our largest commercial buildings to be responsible with respect to energy efficiency. And so I'd ask you, if you object to what your editorial board wrote, to perhaps send them a little letter or tweet at them. Let them know how you feel about the importance of energy efficiency and acting on climate. I do also want to congratulate all of the folks that are getting awards today, and again, thank all of you for the work that you're doing to build a clean energy economy and good green jobs in our communities. Thank you.
This year, our Clean Energy Warriors Award goes to the individuals, companies, and organizations depicted here. Clearly, someone didn't send in a headshot on time. And so he suffered the consequences. So these individuals are Tim Lindell, Keys and Fox, Will Kenworthy, Vote Solar, Josh Stolzenberg and Denny Robleski, Northwind Solar, Jim Pullen, Eagle Point Solar, Eric Schambarger, City of Milwaukee, Brad Klein, Environmental Law and Policy Center of the Midwest, Amy Hart, Sunrun, Nick Hyla, Midwest Renewable Energy Association, and Dave Bender here, who's, Montgomery Burns is standing in for Dave Bender of Earth Justice. At one time or another, these individuals have been at the forefront of the campaign to enable Wisconsin electricity customers to access third-party finance renewable energy systems installed on their property for their own private use. And this has been a long-standing policy priority for Renew, stretching back to 2012. Resolution of this ambiguity would greatly increase the population of property owners and tenants that could access on-site solar power. Third-party financing contracts are expressly allowed in Illinois, Iowa, and Michigan. Going into 2022, 3 entities, SunVest, Sunrun, and Eagle Point Solar, filed petitions seeking a ruling from the PSC on the third-party financing issue. All three petitions were swatted down. In 2022, Vote Solar and MREA presented similar petitions, but set forth a new set of facts. The Vote Solar petition specified a particular installation for a particular family involving a particular contract with a particular provider, which was Northwind Solar, an Amherst-based solar contractor. The PSC found that the system described in the Vote Solar petition does not furnish power either directly or indirectly, quote, to or for the public, unquote. With that finding, the PSC affirmed Vote Solar's petition. So while we celebrate our first victory in this protracted battle, and there will be more battles, it is important to recognize those individuals and entities that had taken up the fight earlier to secure a favorable ruling either from the PSC or from the courts. Their efforts kept the public spotlight focused on the fact that customers are being deprived of reasonable access to clean energy produced on their premises. So with that, it is our privilege to present this year's Clean Energy Warriors Awards to these 10 individuals, and they'll come up at the end of the presentation, and we'll have the picture taking then. But thank you to the Clean Energy Warriors. All right, so on to the Clean Energy Honor Roll. This year's Clean Energy Honor Roll recognizes 7 installations that were recently energized, whether on the basis of their productivity, attention to detail, innovativeness, scale, resourcefulness, or efficacy in reducing carbon emissions. These projects showcase the skills and know-how that stakeholders bring to Wisconsin's clean energy marketplace. So Plymouth-based Arch Solar earns inclusion in this year's honor roll for designing and constructing a vertical solar array that supplies electricity to a 7-story office building owned by Dominion Properties. This was not Arch's first vertical solar installation. In 2014, work crews from Arch constructed a 98-kilowatt vertical array on Milwaukee's Public Museum. This 83-foot by 23-foot installation features 120 solar modules secured with masonry anchors. 3 inverters with power optimizers are attached to the modules to maximize the performance of each module in the array. Though a 90-degree tilt angle reduces system output when the sun is high overhead, it is ideal for capturing sunshine during the winter months. This installation demonstrates that it is possible to use the verticality of an office tower to reduce its carbon footprint with on-site solar power, especially for those buildings that have limited rooftop space. So with that, congratulations to Arch Solar. Madison Society of Friends earns inclusion in this year's honor roll for expanding and renovating their meeting house in a way that showcases electrification and on-site energy use. The renovation involved integrating 3 new energy systems into the design of their building: ground source heat pumps, energy recovery ventilation, and on-site solar. Geothermal wells were drilled into the ground below the meeting house's parking lot, and water from the wells is piped into the house. Using heat exchangers, the heat pumps either heat or cool the interior depending on the season. This is an all-electric approach to controlling building air temperatures. Full Spectrum designed and installed a 20-kilowatt solar PV system that's pictured here. And what this slide tells us that over the course of the year, the array will generate close to 80% of the electricity used at the meeting house, and that's electricity used to heat and cool the building. Between all the technologies deployed, the organization expects to save roughly $2,300 a year in energy bills for the meeting house while minimizing the use of fossil energy. Congratulations to Madison Society of Friends. Bad River Tribe earns inclusion in this year's honor roll for envisioning, developing, and seeing to fruition its Ishkanoge-Navadide project. This is a solar microgrid supporting critical facilities on their reservation. This resiliency project arose in response to flooding in 2016 that left the reservation without power for weeks. Bad River's vision was to pair on-site solar power with storage to withstand a 500-year flood. Led by Dan Wiggins, an air quality technician for Bad River's Natural Resources Department, the tribe developed plans for attracting funding, technical expertise, and engineering know-how for a solar-powered project. Bad River's project was very much a group effort, relying on grants from U.S. Department of Energy and volunteer contributions from Check Bay Renewables, a local renewable or clean energy group, to secure sufficient funding. Modeling support from UGrid Analytics and Madison Solar Consulting also advanced the project. And with this team in place, the Ishkanoge Navadide project was constructed and energized, equipped with more than 500 kilowatts of solar capacity, serving 3 buildings, and more than 1,000 kilowatt hours of battery energy storage. In terms of energy storage, this is the largest solar-powered microgrid operating in Wisconsin today. So congratulations to Bad River Tribe and team. NTech Solutions earns inclusion in this year's honor roll for designing and integrating a solar-powered microgrid in an existing community digester near Middleton. The original biodigester, developed by Gunderson Envision, started operating in 2013. Before the makeover, the facility produced renewable natural gas to generate electricity. Now it uses electricity from solar power to manufacture renewable natural gas. Alone among Wisconsin biodigesters, the Middleton RNG facility features 2,800 kilowatts of on-site solar and a battery storage system that is remotely monitored. This configuration allows the electricity to be either applied to RNG production, stored for later use, or exported onto the grid. And as this quote indicates, increasing the clean energy inputs that go into the production of renewable natural gas increases the value of that gas in certain markets. Finally, this facility has a near-term goal to integrate electric vehicles into the overall energy equation, including an electric truck powered with solar energy to haul the RNG to Dane County's offload station, where it is injected into the interstate pipeline there. Congratulations to NTech Solutions. Alliant Energy earns inclusion in this year's honor roll for acquiring and constructing its Wood County solar project, which is the largest power plant energized in Wisconsin in 2022. This project is situated in the Central Sands region and involved only one property. Until Alliant acquired this site, it had been a working red pine plantation, which is a very common site in Wood County. With nearly 390,000 solar panels, this 150 megawatt plant will generate enough electricity to power nearly 40,000 homes. Along the way, more than 200 jobs were created during the project's construction. Wood County's construction relied on the skilled work and craftsmanship provided by operating engineers, carpenters, laborers, and electricians from nearby union halls, increasing the project's positive economic impact. Neither COVID-19 nor supply chain snarls could disrupt the project's construction timetable. The EPC contractor, Burns & McDonnell, completed the project actually ahead of schedule. Wood County is one of a dozen utility-scale projects that, when they're completed, will enable Alliance Wisconsin Utility to source 20% of its electricity from in-state solar power by 2025. Congratulations to Alliant Energy. Dynamic Renewables earns inclusion in the honor roll for developing, designing, and constructing the BC Organics Refinery Project, Wisconsin's largest community anaerobic digestion facility. By the way, BC stands for Brown County. BC Organics is designed to accept more than 900,000 gallons of manure a day and to convert that flow into 3 products: renewable natural gas, animal bedding, and clean water. Financial support from public entities proved crucial in propelling the $140 million project to fruition. At the outset, Focus on Energy approved a $15 million grant, and following that, USDA provided a loan guarantee worth $104 million. So there were a number of community partners involved in the project. It was also a team effort, and that included Myron Construction, providing design-build services, and McMahon Group, which provided engineering expertise. Both of those companies are headquartered in Neenah. The project's 16 tanks take in manure from 11 nearby farms. Once fully operational, the facility will produce a daily volume of RNG equating to 11,000 gallons of diesel fuel a day, along with 135 tons of bedding and 400,000 gallons of clean water a day. In its scale and in the degree of innovation on display, BC Organics is already paying dividends on its original investment. Congratulations to Dynamic Renewables. And finally, University of Wisconsin-Platteville earns inclusion in the honor roll for envisioning and developing a ground-mount solar array to supply 17% of the electricity used on campus. In a referendum held in 2019, UW-Platteville students voted overwhelmingly in support of a 100% renewable energy goal for the campus, and planning for the array began shortly thereafter. With a cost of $3.4 million, this McKinstry-designed solar array provides power only to the campus. UW-Platteville estimates a savings of $210,000 a year in energy expenses while reducing carbon dioxide emissions by 21,000 tons a year. Operational since last summer, UW-Platteville's array is now the largest state-owned solar project. The school has become the 6th largest on-site producer of renewable power among post-secondary schools in the land. And finally, the array is also a very good fit for the school's curriculum, as UW-Platteville is one of only a handful of four-year colleges that offers a degree in renewable energy. So congratulations to UW-Platteville. All right, so we've gone through all of the slides, and so I would invite the Clean Energy Warriors to come up here, and we'll take a group shot, and then we'll follow that with photos of the Clean Energy Honor Roll recipients. So thank you very much for your kind attention to this part of the program. We really do believe it's an honor to be surrounded by such skilled and visionary people in our state's clean energy marketplace. So thank you very much, and let's get on with the picture taking.